Oh, here you are. Hello. 2 seconds, just going to close the door. Lovely. For a bit of privacy. Oh, hello. Welcome, welcome. We're in a new place, as you can see. First of all, happy Easter. Happy Easter Sunday. Hope you're having a lovely day. I hope it's going well. I hope you're having some good times with friends. Hope the weather's nice. I got to tell you, it's not quite Easter Sunday for me as I'm recording this. It's Easter Saturday. I don't know if there's a term for that. But yeah, so it's not quite Sunday for me, which means Lent is still in effect. So I'm still on the coffee. But rest assured, as you are watching this, I will have had at least 4, if not 5, if not 6, if not 17 cups of tea. So that'll be nice. I'll be enjoying that. And if you've given up anything for Lent, I hope you're enjoying being able to have it again. Or maybe you've learned something. Maybe you've realised you don't need it. That's great as well. So yeah, as you can see, we're not in the usual place. I did, as it was Easter Sunday, want to do this outside with like the bird song and everything. I tried, and it was going really well, but it got really windy. And so I decided like the sound quality wasn't fantastic. So we're in here, which isn't a bad thing, because I'll tell you what's great. I've got an armchair. That's lovely. Instead of my squeaky, swivelly chair that I'm usually used to, I've got a proper armchair. I feel like I'm doing a proper good read, you know, by the fireside on a winter's day. But yeah, lovely. Should we crack on? So last time you were here, it was quite a tough episode, wasn't it? Some of you may have missed it. We had a special episode not a week ago, but on Friday, where we covered chapter 14, The Triumph of the Witch. And it was really, really sad, because we watched as Aslan had clearly made an agreement with the witch to die in Edmund's place. And despite Aslan having done nothing wrong, he died at the hands of the White Witch. And throughout the entire book, we've had all this talk about Aslan as this king, as this saviour who's going to sort of help everyone become free from the shackles and sort of oppression of the White Witch. And then we've seen the White Witch kill Aslan. And so it's sort of, what happens now? Is Aslan who we thought he was? Who's going to save us? Is the White Witch going to just reign forever? What's the deal? So we're going to find out. So thank you so much for joining me. I've lost my place. There we are. Take some time out of your day. Get a cup of tea or final coffee in my case. Still nice. And we'll begin. Chapter 15. Deeper Magic from Before the Dawn of Time. While the two girls still crouched in the bushes with their hands over their faces, they heard the voice of the witch calling out, "Now! Follow me all, and we will set about what remains of this war. It will not take us long to crush the human vermin and the traitors, now that the great fool, the great cat, lies dead." At this moment, the children were, for a few seconds, in very great danger. For with wild cries and a noise of skirling pipes and shrill horns blowing, the whole of that vile rabble came sweeping off the hilltop and down the slope, right past their hiding place. They felt the spectres go by them like a cold wind, and they felt the ground shake beneath them under the galloping feet of the minotaurs. And overhead there went a flurry of foul wings and a blackness of vultures and giant bats. At any other time they would have trembled with fear. But now, the sadness and shame and horror of Aslan's death so filled their minds that they hardly thought of it. As soon as the wood was silent again, Susan and Lucy crept out onto the open hilltop. The moon was getting low, and thin clouds were passing across her, but still they could see the shape of the lion lying dead in his bonds. And down they both knelt in the wet grass, and kissed his cold face, and stroked his beautiful fur, what was left of it, and they cried till they could cry no more. And then they looked at each other and held each other's hands for mere loneliness and cried again. And then again were silent. At last, Lucy said, "I can't bear to look at that horrible muzzle. I wonder, could we take it off?" So they tried. And after a lot of working at it, for their fingers were cold and it was now the darkest part of the night, they succeeded. And when they saw his face without it, they burst out crying again, and kissed it and fondled it and wiped away the blood and the foam as well as they could. And it was all more lonely and hopeless and horrid than I know how to describe. "I wonder, could we untie him as well?" said Susan presently. But the enemies, out of pure spitefulness, had drawn the cord so tight that the girls could make nothing of the knots. I hope no one who reads this book has been quite as miserable as Susan and Lucy were that night. But if you have been, if you've been up all night and cried till you have no more tears left in you, you will know that there comes in the end a sort of quietness. You feel as if nothing was ever going to happen again. At any rate, that was how it felt for these two. Hours and hours seemed to go by in this dead calm, and they hardly noticed that they were getting colder and colder. But at last, Lucy noticed two things. One was that the sky on the east side of the hill was a little less dark than it had been an hour ago. The other was some tiny movement going on in the grass at her feet. At first she took no interest in this. What did it matter? I mean, nothing mattered now. But at last, she saw that whatever it was had begun to move up the upright stones of the stone table. And now whatever they were was moving about on Aslan's body. She peered closer. They were little grey things. "Ugh!" said Susan from the other side of the table. "How beastly! There are horrid little mice crawling all over him. Oh, go away, you little beasts!" And she raised her hands to frighten them away. "Wait!" said Lucy, who had been looking at them more closely still. "Can't you see what they're doing?" So both girls looked down and stared. "I do believe," said Susan. "But how queer! They're nibbling away at the cords." "That's what I thought," said Lucy. "I think they're friendly mice. Oh, poor little things. They don't realise he's dead. They think it'll do some good untying him." It was definitely lighter by now. Each of the girls noticed for the first time the white face of the other. They could see the mice nibbling away, dozens and dozens, even hundreds of little field mice. And at last, one by one, the ropes were all gnawed through. The sky in the east was whitish by now, and the stars were getting fainter. All except one very big one, low down on the eastern horizon. They felt colder than they had been all night. Then the mice crept away again. The girls cleared away the remains of the gnawed rope. Aslan looked more like himself without them. Every moment his dead face looked nobler as the light grew and they could see it better. In the wood behind them, a bird gave a chuckling sound. It had been so still for hours and hours that it startled them. Then another bird answered it. Soon there were birds singing all over the place. It was quite definitely morning by now, not late night. "I'm so cold," said Lucy. "So am I," said Susan. "Let's walk about a bit." They walked to the eastern edge of the hill and looked down. The one big star had almost disappeared. The country all looked dark grey, but beyond, at the very end of the world, the sea showed pale, and the sky began to turn red. They walked to and fro more times than they could count between the dead Aslan and the eastern ridge, trying to keep warm, and oh, how tired their legs felt. Then, at last, as they stood for a moment looking out towards the sea and Cair Paravel, which they could now just make out, the red, turned to gold along the line where the sea and the sky met, and very slowly, up came the edge of the sun. Then, at that moment, they heard from behind them a loud noise. A great, cracking, deafening noise, as if a giant had broken a giant's plate. "What's that?" said Lucy, clutching Susan's arm. I feel afraid to turn round," said Susan. "Something awful is happening." "They're doing something worse to him," said Lucy. "Come on!" And she turned, pulling Susan round with her. The rising of the sun had made everything look so different, all the colours and shadows were changed, that for a moment they didn't see the important thing. But then they did. The stone table was broken into 2 pieces by a great crack that ran down it from end to end. And there was no Aslan. "Oh!" cried the 2 girls, rushing back to the table. "Oh, it's too bad," sobbed Lucy. "They might have left the body alone." "Who's done it?" said Susan. "What does it mean? Is it magic?" "Yes," said a great voice behind them. "It is more magic." They looked round. There, shining in the sunrise, larger than they had ever seen him before, shaking his mane, for apparently it had grown again, stood Aslan himself. "Oh, Aslan!" cried both the children, staring up at him, almost as much frightened as they were glad. "Aren't you dead then, dear Aslan?" said Lucy. "Not now," said Aslan. "You're not asked Susan in a shaky voice. She couldn't quite bring herself to say the word ghost. Aslan stooped his golden head and licked her forehead. The warmth of his breath and a rich sort of smell that seemed to hang about his hair came all over her. "Do I look it?" he said. "Oh, you're real! You're real! Oh, Aslan!" cried Lucy, and both girls flung themselves upon him and covered him with kisses. "But what does it all mean?" asked Susan, when they were somewhat calmer. "It means," said Aslan, "that though the witch knew the deep magic, there is a magic deeper still which she does not know. Her knowledge goes back only to the dawn of time. But if she could have looked back a little further, into the stillness and darkness before time dawned, she would have read there a different incantation. She would have known that when a willing victim who had committed no treachery was killed in a traitor's stead, the table would crack and death itself would start working backwards. And now—" "Oh yes, now!" said Lucy, jumping up and clapping her hands. "Oh, children," said the lion, "I feel my strength coming back to me. Oh, children, catch me if you can." He stood for a second, his eyes very bright, his limbs quivering, lashing himself with his tail. Then he made a leap high over their heads and landed on the other side of the table. Laughing, though she didn't know why, Lucy scrambled over it to reach him. Aslan leaped again. A mad chase began. Round and round the hilltop he led them, now hopelessly out of their reach, now letting them almost catch his tail, now diving between them, now tossing them in the air with his huge and beautifully velveted paws and catching them again, and now stopping unexpectedly so that all 3 of them rolled over together in a happy, laughing heap of fur and arms and legs. It was such a romp that no one has ever had except in Narnia. And whether it was more like playing with a thunderstorm or playing with a kitten, Lucy could never make up her mind. And the funny thing was that when all 3 finally lay together, panting in the sun, the girls no longer felt in the least tired or hungry or thirsty. "And now," said Aslan presently, "to business. Oh, I feel I'm going to roar. You had better put your fingers in your ears." And they did, and Aslan stood up, and when he opened his mouth to roar, his face became so terrible that they did not dare look at it, and they saw all the trees in front of him bend before the blast of his roaring, as grass bends in a meadow before the wind. Then he said, "We have a long journey to go. You must ride on me." And he crouched down, and the children climbed onto his warm, golden back, and Susan sat first, holding on tightly to his mane, and Lucy sat behind, holding on tightly to Susan. And with a great heave, he rose underneath them, and then shot off, faster than any horse could go, downhill and into the thick of the forest. That ride was perhaps the most wonderful thing that happened to them in Narnia. Have you ever had a gallop on a horse? Right, okay, think of that, and then take away the heavy noise of the hooves and the jingle of the bits, and imagine instead the almost noiseless padding of great paws. Then imagine, instead of the black or grey or chestnut back of the horse, the soft roughness of golden fur, and the mane flying back in the wind. And then imagine you are going about twice as fast as the fastest racehorse. But this is a mount that doesn't need to be guided and never grows tired. He rushes on and on, never missing his footing, never hesitating, threading his way with perfect skill between tree trunks, jumping over bush and briar and the smaller streams, wading the larger, swimming the largest of all. And you are riding not on a road, nor in a park, not even in the downs, but right across Narnia, in spring, down solemn avenues of beech and across sunny glades of oak, through wild orchards of snow-white cherry trees, past roaring waterfalls and mossy rocks and echoing caverns, up windy slopes alight with gorse bushes, and across the shoulders of heathery mountains, and along giddy ridges, and down, down, down again, into wild valleys and out into acres of blue flowers. Whew! It was nearly midday when they found themselves looking down a steep hillside at a castle. A little toy castle it looked from where they stood, which seemed to be all pointed towers. But the lion was rushing down at such a speed that it grew larger every moment, and before they had time even to ask themselves what it was, they were already on a level with it. Oh, and it no longer looked like a toy castle, but rose frowning in front of them. No face looked over the battlements, and the gates were fast shut. And Aslan, not at all slacking his pace, rushed straight as a bullet towards it. "The witch is home," he cried. "Now, children, hold tight!" Next moment, the whole world seemed to turn upside down, and the children felt as if they had left their insides behind them. For the lion had gathered himself together for a greater leap than any he had yet made, and jumped, or you may call it flying, rather than jumping, right over the castle wall. The two girls, breathless but unhurt, found themselves tumbling off his back in the middle of a wide stone courtyard full of statues. Whew! And if you want to find out what happens with those statues, please join us next week for Chapter 16, What Happened About the Statues. Oh, what a chapter! What a chapter! Ah, love it! So on Friday we had all this despair and grief where it looked like Aslan had lost, that the White Witch had won, that she was going to reign forever over Narnia with such terror and cruelty, and that there was no hope. But now we see that the White Witch knows nothing of the deep magic, and Aslan does. And by dying, he's saved Edmund's life, but not only that, he has reversed the laws of death, and that he has been brought back to life, and he's reigning again, more powerful, and as it said, larger and greater than ever. It's just wonderful. I love that chapter. C.S. Lewis has such a great way of getting you to sympathise with the characters. I love how he addresses us directly, you and me. He says, "Have you ever felt like this?" And it sort of really helps us to empathise with Susan and Lucy in that moment of great despair, because I'm sure all of us have had moments where we've despaired and we can't find much hope. But at the same time, because we're able to relate with them at that moment, we can then relate to them when Aslan returns, and they have so much joy and excitement. And I absolutely love the description of them riding on his back through Narnia. It's just such magical language, isn't it? And you can tell what an important moment it is, because obviously it's on the cover. and that's such a lovely image of them just sort of holding on to him as he rides through. And I'm so grateful that I started this series on Sundays. I'm so thankful that we get to do one on Easter Sunday, and that it was this chapter. I'm sure you can guess what the relevance is. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me on this Easter Sunday. It means so much that you join me for it. I love reading these chapters. It can sometimes be a bit difficult setting things up, but it's absolutely worth it for rediscovering these books. But yeah, I hope you have a lovely Easter Sunday. I hope you're having lots of fun. I hope the weather's nice. I hope you're spending some time with friends or family in this lovely spring weather, celebrating that the King is risen. He is risen indeed. But until next week, I hope you take care. Bye bye.